this stuff into your logs and alert accordingly. You put g.keys as a username and you don't have a Gary Keys working for you, and you start seeing alerts that someone's trying to log in somewhere with G keys. You have someone who's actually attacking you, right? And this isn't just someone running OpenVAS or discovered Nmap today. And I'll come back to that here in a second, but I want to talk about a different way of trying to separate the corrupt from the real stuff. So if you've never heard of Port Spoof, it's a really cool project, and the intended use case for it is that you take your web server, and say it's listed on 443. Port Spoof, the idea is you let that web server listen on all ports, and Port Spoof will listen on 1 to 442 and 444 to 65,500, blah, blah, blah. And it'll actually respond with fairly valid-looking headers and banners when people try to connect to it. And the whole idea is someone's on your network or someone's scanning your perimeter. They have no idea what's legitimate or what's not legitimate from a simple Nmap scan. I'll be honest, I've never been brave enough to just take one of my legitimate servers and not put a firewall in front of it and allow all ports to be open. But what I was brave enough to do is the company I was working for had about 1,000 IP addresses, externally facing IP addresses that they weren't using, like most older companies. So I took all those IP addresses and I NATed them to a physical box that was 100% isolated from the rest of my network and set up Port Spoofs to listen on all ports. And then I used the Harvester's list of A records to give them valid DNS entries that I know that hacker tools are trying to go for. And the whole idea was, now I have this box that is listing on 1,000 IP addresses that are associated with my company. Someone goes to Aaron.net, they can see that my company has these IP addresses. They start scanning. It becomes really, really hard for them to detect what is real and what is fake. And, depending on their Nmap settings, it could take as much as 12 hours per IP address to get a good Nmap scan. So it starts to get real, real messy. So to show you what that looks like, this is a Splunk dashboard of this box, and this is in production. So what you're seeing there is for a 4-hour period, that's 34,300 unique IPs that hit this box. So to be clear, that's not 34,300 connections. This is unique IPs that hit this box in 4 hours. It was way more active than I thought it would be. And the ports are what you would expect: 445, 23, 1433, 80, 3389. For a while there, 2323 was super popular. That was due to the Mirai botnet. And the source countries are exactly what you would expect as well. Strangely, the Netherlands was winning at that time, but typically it was Russia. But yeah, this is 34,300 unique IPs over 4 hours that are hitting my perimeter, trying to find a way in. And it's really fun because like DNS Map or Shodan for this company, it's like brrr. Just so much stuff comes up every so often. People pop on Twitter going, hey, anyone have a security contact at this company because they appear to be super compromised. Here's a map of where we were seeing the traffic coming from. Again, that's just a 4-hour window. So the takeaway there is the internet's mean and full of jerks. But yeah, it's super busy, but it was definitely slowing folks down. But it's not really helping us to isolate the corrupt from the real stuff. So what can we do with this? I think the obvious idea is to just automate your blocking, right? So I've seen a single source IP that's hitting 20 of these addresses. It's probably not something I want talking to me, so I could block it. Or a single source IP that hit 14 ports on one IP address, could just block it. I have a link up here to Palo Alto's MindMeld project. It's an open source project that takes in data sources and threat intelligence sources, and then spits out in a method that it can easily be ingested by security appliances such as Palo Alto firewalls, but it can work with other stuff. But that's not really cool, or deception. So instead of blocking, let's go with more deception. So a suggestion I'd make is to start building some fake internet presence. Fake sites, portals, login pages, just stuff that you set on the public internet to mess with those attackers. And since you're doing all this cool Port Spoof stuff, you could do things like set up natting to anytime you see something that you know is illegitimate, or actually just blocking anything that's illegitimate, blocks them from ever being able to reach your real stuff. So they're sitting there all day long and they're hitting all of your deception sites, but they never actually get to see your real stuff. Or if you really have a good network team, get them to NAT your legitimate sites over to the deception site. So if you have mail.company.com, and that's where your actual mail portal is, let that go to a deceptive mail portal. This is tricky to do and depends on your technology, but it's a great gauntlet to throw down with your network team. Like, hey, some guy at DerbyCon said this is super easy, so if you can't do it, you guys must suck. So for example, how about a fake VPN login page? So this is something I set up. Created a SSL VPN login page that had a fake credential harvesting bug. So typical old bug. I give you an invalid username and invalid password. It returns invalid username. I give you a valid username and an invalid password. It says invalid password. So someone doing harvesting can easily script that and say, oh, cool, I can get a list of all your users this way. And I would also allow them occasionally to have a successful login, and then I would just send them to a fake MFA challenge. So they would think, hey, I just got full credits on this site. Easily scriptable. I know from at least one pen test that I kept our tester busy for a day before I realized he was doing it, and I felt real bad. Well, you are kind of wasting your pen testing dollars on that, but it's fun to watch. So, what I did is I wrote it back into all this, went and did some research, said, what's the average age of the American worker, which is 41 years of age. Average names correlate to J. Smith being the most obvious name or the most common name. So I made a weighted table of that. And then I went and got, some common password lists and put a weighted table of that. So it basically worked out that if you logged in with J. Smith in summer 2019, you had about an 18% chance of that coming up as a completely valid credential. If you just logged in with J. Smith, you had an 80% chance of that being a valid username. And then going back to those fake usernames that we put in our metadata, this would be a great place that make all your logins that succeed here would be G.keys instead of G keys, that first initial last name or first initial period last name. So again, someone attacking your perimeter thinks that they're getting your username formats, thinks they're getting real usernames, but really they're not getting anything. So to show what that looks like, my company does not have a Sonic wall, so I just stole this did a Shodan search, found someone's Sonic wall, and just stole it. And to be very clear, Sonic wall does not have this vulnerability. They don't have a credential harvesting bug. I just created this. So here they are, invalid username. Here they are with an invalid password, and Vince McMahon's super happy. He thinks he's got a real username. Or if they get the actual MFA cred or challenge, then he thinks he's got a full login. Really, he's got nothing. But now you have something that is totally worth watching your internal network for. And I mean, it kind of does separate that cruft from a real attacker, right? Like someone who made it this far, that's a real attacker. This is not someone who's just scanning your perimeter. So that's cool. Oh, and one other thing, if you're not familiar with Honey Badger, this is a project from Black Hills, and it's a geolocation. It's a kind of a hack back sort of thing. And the idea is, you get them to the attacker to execute some code on their box, and via the Google APIs, they'll track where they actually are. John Strand showed a bit of this at his presentation yesterday. The trick with this has always been trying to get the attacker to launch something on their box. It used to be only a Java applet, and trying to get someone to launch a Java applet in 2019 is real hard. But for an SSL VPN, it's totally legitimate. Host checkers require Java typically. So this is a really obvious and completely legitimate way that someone was like, oh yeah, I gotta install that Java applet. And your attackers are just as bad as your end user. Like, yeah, sure, run, I don't care. So that's a cool way of doing it. So this, I just open sourced this, we call it the Web Trolling Framework, or WTF. So you can go to that GitHub repository. Oh, and by the way, if you work for a company that refuses to do anything unless Gartner tells them to, or compliance tells them to, or, it's an industry best practice. We named the GitHub repository industry best practice, so you can tell your employer, oh yeah, no, I know this total great industry best practice for Sampa Web Troll. Give it a shot. All right, so let's go inside. So that's trying to wean stuff off of the internet. So let's take this back inside. So a couple scenarios here. Let's say you have a foreign device on your network. So someone tailgated their way in, someone from TrustedSec came in and dropped a tap on your network or something like that. I know, right? I just saw you come in out of the corner of my eyes, so I was just going to call you out. Anyway, so they get a device on your network. So they're going to start mapping, right? They don't know where they're at. They don't know where they landed. Probably one of the first things they're going to do, because it's more or less passive, is start scanning, doing reverse DNS lookups. And you can set up your SIM alerts of a single source IP that's hitting a ton of DNS entries. But it's a race condition, and if I have a foothold on your network and I have no reason to rush, I mean, what's your race condition? Or 4 DNS checks in 10 minutes? I mean, I could wait months on this. But what you can do is just create a bunch of fake pointer records. Put something in all subnets, just, everyone's got unused IP space, and then just put that in your SIEM. Anytime you see someone query that DNS record, that's an alert you shouldn't see unless it's a true positive, and you can go track them down. Going further, Nmap. Pen testers love their Nmap scans. They come in and go, oh, you got a Palo Alto? Yeah, our Nmap scans go right around that. No problem. We're not concerned. But honeypots is where it's at. And most people hear honeypots, they hear money, they hear complexity. You don't need that, especially for early detection. All you need is something that's sitting on your network and has no reason for anyone to ever interact with it. So our friends over at Binary Defense have a really, really cool tool called Artillery. All it is a Python script that listens on a set of ports and spits out to a log file if anyone ever connects to it on that port. That's all it is. And what I like to do with this, or what I totally recommend doing with this, is grab yourself a Raspberry Pi, put a ton of IP addresses on it. The research I showed, I saw someone who got 4,000 IPs on a single Raspberry Pi before it exploded. So there's 4,000 honeypots for you. But drop it on your network and let it roll. If anyone scans your network, chances are they're going to hit that thing, right? And we're talking, a $30 solution for 4,000 IP or 4,000 honeypots. Good luck to the attackers of avoiding that. And again, there should be almost no false positives to this. It's a box in your network that no one uses, right? And then the other thing I see people do all the time is run Responder. Every pen test I've seen for years, the first thing the tester does is he comes in, plugs into my network, launches terminal, launches Responder, minimizes it, and says, I'll come back to that later. So first thing, disable LMNR. Please. I'm stunned that Microsoft is still enabling that by default. If anyone has ever had a problem disabling, like it's caused problems, come talk to me because I'd love to hear why. But once you've done that, there's a fantastic open source tool called Respounder. All it does is it sends an LMNR request using a random host name that should not exist on your network, and if something responds, it lets you know. So you put in a cron job, let it run every minute, and it just LMNR request, LMNR request. And if something ever responds, I guarantee you it's Responder. So again, put this on your Raspberry Pi, put on those 4,000 IPs. Every subnet has Respounder running every minute. It's making it real hard for that attacker. So while you all were watching Sublime last night, a couple of friends and I were up late in our hotel room getting this thing live. So new project called Bootsy, which automates the deployment of Artillery and Respounder on Raspberry Pis, does the IP address configuration for you, sets up syslog and email alerting, takes a minute to create hundreds of honeypots. Super, super simple. I wish I had this 3 years ago. But please check it out. Like I said, we just pushed it yesterday. This initial release, we called it Starting Line. I'd love to hear some feedback and what you guys think of it. All right, cool. All right, so let's say they've compromised an actual trusted system, phishing attack, what have you. So things they're going to start doing is looking for credentials that are stored in that box. So let's give them some. A couple commands up there are placing things in the Windows credentials store. So you could just put this in your logon scripts, place some credentials that you know about in those scripts. If you see anyone's tried to log into them, again, put it in your SIEM and alert. Cooler projects down below, Honeybits and Honeyhash, get it a bit more fancy. We'll actually inject things in LSASS to play with WCE or Mimikatz. Again, just put them in your login scripts. If you find Ben 10, I'll talk about this a little bit later too. Ben 10 has a new project that he's building called Polar Bear, and he's building this in as well, and it looks insanely cool. So hit him up. He's walking around right now with like 3 kids. You can tell because he's about a foot higher than them. He looks like a big brother who's having to babysit. It's so sad. Consider doing this for other common applications like Putty and FileZilla. Put in some saved logins. There's actually some really cool deceptive SSH servers out there like Cowrie. You can put in fake logins. Someone gains access to your network or to a box and they try to SSH into these boxes. You can let them play around for a while you slowly find them and tase them. So John talked a little bit about this yesterday, actually a lot about this yesterday. Another thing they're very likely to do is start looking for juicy files. Canary tokens, Thinkst. This stuff is fantastic. I'm not going to harp on this too long because John already took care of it, but really check out this website. There are so many easy things that you can generate and get simple alerts. You don't have to build up any infrastructure for this. They took care of all of it. You just have to put the files on your system. What I like to do is just put these on like the user profile directory, not in their documents, but just in the user profile directory, and wait for someone to hit it. What drives are mapped? So this is really fun. So here's the only honeypot server I recommend inside, and it's just a simple SMB server. You can just run Samba or stand up an actual Windows server, and then build some fake drive mappings through your logon script. So the little reg key hack I have here just hides the drive letters from the GUI from Windows Explorer. So it'll still show up if I'm on the command prompt and do run net. I'll see these drives are mapped, but the end user won't see them. So what I like to do is book in my actual drive mapping. So say our home drive is mapped to I, so I'll create a fake drive mapping to H and J. Reason being, one, just human nature, an attacker will probably start alphabetically. Or also ransomware tends to start either alphabetically or reverse alphabetically, so this might give you some help there if you ever get stuck in that. But so, all it is this registry entry, and the way Windows works is it's all in decimal values of power of 2. So if you want to hide the A drive from ever showing up in the GUI, that's 1, N is 8192, so 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, blah, 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 blah. But it's a really cool way of just getting some fake drive mappings out there. So just stand up a simple Windows file server, and I just wrote a quick PowerShell script that cloned all the drive letter or all the files from my main file server to my fake one, and just filled them with some random data to make it look real. One other item I have down there is how to create a recursive directory in Windows. So the fun thing to do about this is if I'm on a box and I do like a dir/s, it'll get stuck in there forever. If you have an interpreter shell on a box and you do a search from there, it'll get stuck forever and they'll lose their shell. And if they kill their shell, it'll keep running. So hopefully your end user will eventually go, my system's running like crap. What is going on? So it gives you some hints of something strange is going on. All right, so what can we learn from AD? That's obviously something they're going to do, right? So they're going to start querying Active Directory, and this is old classic stuff that everyone should be doing, and I'm always amazed when people aren't. So Kerberos is a thing. Fake SPNs is a great way of dealing with that. So create some obvious SPNs. I like to stick with SQL servers. Give them admin count of 1 and start scanning your logs for anyone trying to use these things. Fake computers, users, and groups. What I like to do is, so most organizations have some sort of standard, like ADM endpoints is the group you have for local admin rights to your endpoints. Cool, create an ADM underscore endpoints or endpoints underscore ADM. And so an attacker has no idea which group is right. And then, if you're doing things right and you have separate accounts for different privilege levels, so you have your standard user account, but then your admins have like a priv underscore account. Also give them a user underscore priv account. Make those their deceptive creds and put those in your deceptive groups. And the whole point of the game is trying to get to the point where the attacker is querying AD and trying to figure out what accounts they should go after, have no clue which ones are the ones that are actually in use and which ones are just there. And then it's simple logging, right? It's not hard to build a Splunk rule for looking for anything that has username underscore priv when all your logins are priv underscore username. So you're just building all these little traps in here. Fake domain admins, again, John dealt with this yesterday as well. So one, to back up what he said, make sure that those accounts can't actually log on, because a fake domain admin that's an actual domain admin that an attacker can use is not a fake domain admin. That's a domain admin. So don't do that. I like to use just old cruft that you tend to see in older organizations. The first person who set up vCenter back in the day made a domain admin because they were lazy and they didn't know any better, and that's just stayed. SQL admins is another good one. But put them in there and make sure they're not actually useful for anything. Set your logon hours to 0 or set some group policies to prevent login. And then start looking for use. And then getting back to Ben 10, so his Polar Bear IO project. Again, if you see him, track him down and talk to him about it because it's really cool. I won't go into it because I have limited time. But if you want to do something really fun and create an actual fake Active Directory domain, what you can do with Ben 10's project is you can alter the output of things like who am I to change what domain you're logged into. So, you're logging into derbycon.local, and you create fake derbycon.local, and I land on your box, and I run who am I, and it says, fake derbycon.local /jnestor, where really I'm on derbycon.local. That attacker now thinks that's the domain they're on, and that's the domain they should be interacting with and going after and querying. Meanwhile, they're not actually there. So again, there's some cool voodoo and magic that Ben 10's doing. I fully recommend you go and talk to him about it. Sorry, just make sure I got everything. All right, so God, that went fast. I'm sorry. So if you'd like to know more, John Strand has a great book, Offensive Countermeasures. Hit him up over at the Black Hills booth, at least earlier this morning. They were still handing some out. He'll sign it for you, if you can call it that. John's autograph is like 3 scribbles. That's kind of neat. Take a gander also at their ADHD project. It's basically Kali for defenders who like deception. And it's a Linux distribution purely built around deception, and it's really, really cool. Again, talk to Ben 10. His Polar Bear project is really, really cool. If you are rolling in money, there are a lot of companies that are going after this space now. There's some really cool software out there, some cool services. Some companies that are doing it as their core competency, other companies that are just kind of tacking onto other stuff they're doing. Come talk to me after the conference, or after this presentation. I'll give you some suggestions of companies I like in this space. But there's some really, really cool stuff going on out there. And I love this stuff. Deception is probably the thing I like the most in defensive security right now. It's a place where I can be creative and get away from the bore, and I love making attackers and pen testers swear. One of my favorite things I've ever done was a red team assessment with a company that I respect the hell out of, and an attacker got on my network, dropped a device. He was there for about 6 months trying to move and had lateral all shut down. After 6 months, he decided to try to go vertical. We had him in like 20 seconds. So I called him while I was holding their device, and he answered the phone with, "Mother!" For a defender, it's just the greatest thing ever, right? All right, so hit me up. Snorkel42, I'd love to talk about it. And that's it. I'm taking questions. Yes, sir.
Can you put your GitHub URL back up?
Yeah, and I'll get these slides out. I'll put them on SlideShare. All right. Thanks, guys.